All right, so we're gonna get started with our final session of the day. Man, is that loud or no? Okay. With our final session of the day, super excited to bring like three of my favorite people to talk to when it comes to this subject, particularly. And so, when it comes to rebuild, honestly, I always try to. I guess like bring light to the people who support me, bring light to the people who have built me up to what we're doing, because I feel like I'm just a vessel to be able to spread these resources out and to have these connections. And so again, super excited to have all three of you all on the stage at one time to talk about something that I feel like is important to the community. And for those of you who don't know about the Rebuild Honestly series, Rebuild Honestly was created in response to COVID-19 through BXKC. And we wanted to present a platform to where we could talk about subjects of impact to the Black community in a authentic and transparent space. And to provide not only our community, but also our allies the opportunities to see how they can support the inevitable growth that we have as a community. And so this particular conversation, and this is our final Rebuild Honestly of the year, and to kind of bring it all up, to sum it all up, to get everybody prepared for the holidays, I felt that healthy culture is a good way for us to think about it. And if you read the description, it was around, how do we get our mind, our body, and our soul ready to transition into the next year in terms of grief, in terms of health, in terms of just mental stability, which is not just acute to acute is probably not the right word, but it's not just directed to the holidays, but it's something that we it's something that we experience throughout the entire year. And so, but I think it's just heightened during the holidays, right? And so I just want to have a candid, casual conversation with each of you all. I'll give you all the opportunity. I like introducing people. So you'll introduce yourself. And kind of like that first question that I sent y'all. By the way, I sent them questions, y'all. I never do this. But, who you are, if you want to say a place that you represent, an organization that you represent, and what is it that you would like people to leave with your impact in this conversation with? That makes sense. Mm-hmm. I know it's hard to think about in a future sense, but but yeah, think about that. And we actually gonna start with the other Craig. He's not the other Craig. Like, I've been knowing Craig since I was like little. Man, like, yeah, he's been a part of a lot of my growth. And so, okay, I'm done. I'm not even interested. There you go, Craig.
So I try to sit over here.
That ain't how I work.
I'm Craig Donnell Jr. I'm the owner of Potential Living LLC. It's a fitness business where fitness, wellness, health. Potential Living is a mindset, a way of life. We believe that each area is connected, and you gotta be intentional with your decisions if you want to thrive physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, financially, because every one of them is correlated. So we just try to really impact you and turn your cans to your cans and show you that anything is possible once you believe it. And what I would like people to leave here with is understanding that anything's possible.
I'm about to say, you already said it.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Don.
Yeah. Testing 1, 2. Let me see.
Yeah, it's on now. I'm Don Carter. I would talk to
The camera or just each other?
or just in general. My name is Don Carter. I am what I call a transformational executive coach. Have a coaching company where I work with executives and entrepreneurs, primarily been Black executives and entrepreneurs over the last year, helping them step into the next level of their own personal and professional evolution. And really what that involves is a reacquaintance with the self in a new way and a new relationship with growth. I'm a former police officer. I was a police officer, detective here in Kansas City for 10 years, and then went through a significant transformation over the course of the last 8 years or so. In that job, I had gotten to the point where I was surviving rather than serving, and I knew that I wanted to live more fully and really use more of the things that I have that could be of valuable contribution to the world. And so my coaching practice now actually just released a book yesterday, so I'm a published author, which is a significant shift and change for myself as well. And I think what I'd love for people to get from maybe any insights that I bring today are just my observance that life always creates more life. And so when any of the shifts or changes that happen in our experience of life come, that they are really making a way for more good things if we're able to embrace them. So I think that's it, Brenda.
That's good.
All right, Ms. Jones. Mrs. Jones.
Hello. Okay. So my name is Christina Jones, and I believe the way that I was presented for the panel is as the Vice President of Programs for the Child Abuse Prevention Association. So that's what I do full time. I am, just like it says, I support all of the programs at that nonprofit. It's a nonprofit organization that provides mental health resources, so counseling, some prevention resources, and community education. We serve all of the Kansas City metro area. We mostly serve children and their families. So that's what I do all day as a full-time job, but I'm also an entrepreneur. I have a private counseling practice, because I'm a licensed professional counselor in the state of Missouri, and I'm also licensed in Kansas. So I do provide counseling to people. So so I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a business owner, one-person business. And what else do I do? So I do a variety of things as a counselor and as a mental health professional. I also provide licensure supervision to counselors in training. So I help grow new and in training counselors, which I love doing that. I love pouring into new counselors and helping support their growth and development. I also teach. So I've been an adjunct at Metropolitan Community College, teaching teachers that are going to support young children. So I do a whole lot of stuff. So I know we're going to get into a lot that has to do with mental wellness, and I definitely have a lot that I can say about that. But one thing I hope that everyone leaves with as a result of listening to me ramble tonight is maybe expanding perspective on how to love ourselves well. That is really big for me in all the avenues of work that I have and all the ways that I engage people and community, is I am always encouraging and trying to shift perspective on how we love ourselves well.
That's good.
Love it. See why I got them on stage? Because I ain't know. I'm just going to ask questions and just sit back and probably cry a little bit too, just because I'm going to do some self-reflection. I think the first question that I want to ask all of you all, and especially just kind of, and the reason why I wanted to present this conversation, because I feel like when it comes to mental health, when it comes to professional development, when it comes to fitness, a lot of the misconceptions around that inside the community is based around, not even say misconceptions. I feel like a lot of what is being told is there's generational curses that are being passed down from the way that we eat, the way that we think, the way that we talk to our children. How do you all see in each of your practices maybe those generational curses coming up, and what is your solution for it? Or if you don't see it and you feel like it's a misconception, what is your perspective on generational curses in the community? Whoever wants to start, but I will name names if I got to. So
I mean, if I'm being really transparent, when I hear even the term generational curses, I'm very skeptical. And my skepticism is mostly around the idea that there are these predetermined things that are outside of the realm of our influence that we have to fight against. I think the Black community specifically, and human beings in general, may have a disposition that they are in contention with the world. And that contention is actually what creates the sense of pressure that people feel like they're fighting against, and that it's really unnecessary. So I think the idea of generational curses, obviously I don't know the ins and outs of all the unseen parts of what we experience in life, but I would lean towards that being a myth. Now, I believe also that there are habits and conditions that are passed down to people to where we adopt the things that are around us in a way that feel like they are not our choices, and maybe they're not initially, but we always have the ability to choose once we become aware of that thing. And it's not like we're doomed to something just because it's in existence currently. And so the idea of a generational curse is like, oh, once you actually get aware that there's something in your life or in your behavior or in your practice that you don't desire anymore, that's not in alignment with what you ultimately want, you do have the agency and the power to change that. And so a solution to that, I don't know if there's any one specific one, but the initial thing is just that awareness, that if I'm aware that something is not what I want it to be, now I have the opportunity and the opportunity to grow the ability to address it in a way that is actually meaningful to me. So,
I think the way I think about it is along similar lines to what you're describing. But I think my perspective on it, and typically this is just how I operate, is that I meet people where they are. So while I might not use the language of generational curses, I might not adopt that language or use that language. There are a lot of people that do. So there are many people that believe in generational curses, and I tend to just meet people right where they are, mirror their language, acknowledge what they think might be at play for them. So your question was, do I see generational curses like me personally? No, but I work with a lot of people that do. And I work with a lot of people and support a lot of people that believe, have a belief system that includes the concept of generational curses. So, but similarly to what you were saying, I think that meeting people right where they are with their belief system is what people believe ultimately influences the way they think. And then it influences the way they feel and then the things that they do. So it doesn't matter if I think generational curses are real. If there is a large part of our culture that does believe that they're real, then we have to contend with that. You know, we have to kind of acknowledge that and validate that. The work that I do, what I would say I see a lot of is patterns. I see a lot of belief patterns. I see a lot of thought patterns. I see a lot of behavioral patterns, and sometimes they are shared within a culture. And they can sometimes become woven into the fabric of a culture, and it looks like this is just what we do. Does it have to be what we do? Are we actively choosing this as what we do? So, I think some of it is kind of just teasing it apart or sitting with a person and understanding, what is the root of some of what you're seeing? Do you believe that this is a generational curse? Okay, well, let's work with that. Let's talk about what that looks like. What does that mean to you? Where does that come from? How do we pull it apart? How does this play into where you want your life to look like? I mean, it's kind of an interesting question, to be honest.
That's what I mean.
But that is I believe that is a language, like within our shared language, our shared community language that comes up. That those are words that are used. Those are things that our culture, that's embedded into our culture. whether all of us believe in it or not. You know, it's there.
Craig, did you have something? Because I gotta follow that.
No, I was just gonna say.
I agree with that. And I think it's more with habits and patterns, like you said, like especially with the way we eat. In my world as a fitness coach, I see there's so many habits. One thing I see a lot is a lot of people don't see themselves well. So they'll be doing things like, I eat healthy. I'm like, okay, write down everything you eat for 3 weeks. And it'd be like 30 things on the list that's not healthy. I'm like, well, this is healthy. I'm not doing this. So I think it's a lot of things we've been taught as kids. We might adopt it from our parents, and then there's genetics. So it might not be a generational curse, but there's genetics. And we get on social media, we want to look like this person, but our body type is more of this. So just, I think it's a knowledge thing.
Yeah, I think that there's some saying that it's an interesting question because it draws up all this thought about, you know, who we are and why we are what we are. And even speaking to the genetics of it. Again, I'm not a geneticist or anything like that, but having the belief that there are messages of some sort encoded in our DNA that predispose us to certain things, certain behaviors, certain ways, I believe that's a real thing. Even in our understanding and knowledge of what the world is like I don't have any direct experience of some of the things that maybe our ancestors did, but I have these reactions to things. Like even when I first became a police officer, it was like I hadn't had any direct negative experiences with police. Yet when I chose to become a police officer, I literally took 3 months to decompress all of the beliefs that there were surrounding that, so that I could become the police officer. So this says it's on, but it's obviously a little spotty. So all of that stuff is real in the experience, but that doesn't mean it has to stay that way. And so a generational curse is like something that is coming from outside of me to my experience, where it's like, oh, you are cursed. And I think we're at least where I imagine Black people generate this idea is like from places in the Bible or something like that, where it's coming to mind about where God is going to curse so-and-so these generations and then he'll bless these generations. And so there's a deep belief in spirituality that comes from that language. Like a cursing is you casting something bad on someone. And so we think that anything we're experiencing is negative comes from on high, and so we don't really have anything to do about it. But the truth is that we're directing our experiences to a great degree.
So I think to summarize that, it sounds like, in simplest form, like words matter, right? And so when we adapt those words into our daily talk and how we approach things, it can affect us mentally or drive us to do things unconsciously that we're not aware of. And so how do you, this is not a question I wrote, so I'm sorry. How do we, in a sense, like reprogram ourselves? Like, you know, with me going through therapy, like I've heard all these things about like my breathing. I have shallow breathing. I need to breathe from my abdomen so that I can release these, I don't know what they're called, so I'm not gonna even try to say what they're called. I was about to say pheromones. I don't think it's not. Oh, sure. That's not the one. Okay, it's not one. That's how it's so anyway, I release these things inside of me that put me in a stress-induced space, right? And even like at times where I shut down and I'm being quiet, I can't shut down and be quiet because it's also triggering a fight or flight. Like my survival is like, things are too quiet, so like something's gotta be wrong. So I have to reprogram, like how do you all support the people that you're talking to reprogram, or what do you feel like is a best practice that you can do at home that you wouldn't need, that you don't have to use a professional for?
Let's hear it.
So, it's my jam. So, you know, along these same lines of loving yourself well, most of the work really that I do with clients has to do with deepening into yourself, deepening into a space where you are really connecting with yourself. It is very hard to unlearn and then direct yourself to learn something new if you are not really conscious or aware of what you're already thinking and believing and saying and doing and feeling. One thing that's really hard for us as human beings is to just be present with ourselves, unless you're really intentional. And these are things you guys have talked about already. Being really intentional about spending time with yourself, connecting with yourself in unique and creative ways, scanning your body, having the breath work, but really paying attention to what's happening inside of you when something's going on. You have an experience. Your body has a whole reaction. I mean, it talks to you. It tells you what it's thinking, what it believes, what maybe this experience, how this experience is maybe connected to another experience that you've had that maybe is not at the forefront of your mind, but there are some things being triggered. So there's all kind of stuff that we just have to really understand. So I think the best way to describe it, unlearning and relearning, if you imagine yourself in a romantic relationship with someone, for those of you who are married or dating, when you're with your significant other, you know that it takes a significant amount of time to just focus on that person, to get to know them, understand them, because sometimes what they're telling you is not what they mean, right? And so sometimes you're like deciphering, you're like, okay, they said this, but what they really mean. Spend enough time to know what they really mean is this. When they cry, this is what they need. And so all that learning of your partner, you have to do that with yourself. All that work we put into building relationships with others, most of the time we don't put that same amount of work into building a relationship with ourselves. We have to know ourselves. There are lots of things that I didn't realize I was thinking and believing until I was confronted by my own therapist. And this is a lifelong process, but the very first time a therapist told me I had low self-esteem, I was like, you don't know me. You haven't spent enough time with me. I definitely don't have low self-esteem. And then when they presented to me my behavior, my patterns, my experiences that I had shared with them, they're like, but help me make sense of why all this? How was this allowed? Why did you think this was okay? If you thought so highly of yourself. And so seeing myself better. So I think, starting with yourself, learning yourself, understanding yourself, figuring out what you need. Those are all the most significant ways to kind of unlearn and reprogram. Because you can't do any of that work without first seeing what's here. What do I think about this for real? How do I really feel about this? Not the impressive answer that I'm going to share with other people, but how do I really feel about this? What do I really believe about this? What do I think about it? Even the ugly answers. That's how you figure out, okay, well, what do I want to keep? And what do I want to discard? And then what do I want to adopt? And that's a very long, painful, ugly process. It really can be. To reprogram, like a full, that's a lot. It's a lot of work.
Yeah, I had to like look in the right hand corner and stay in
And
it.
then
What?
brain
Oh my
spotting.
God, it was
Okay.
man, I was uncomfortable. But yeah, if anybody else,
That's a good word for it, is uncomfortable. I don't want to jump on what you like. But Christine, I love that that's what you said. I don't really know if there's any other answer because I was going with the same thing. And there's a significant difference between spending time by yourself and spending time with yourself. And when you said that, I was like, that's the one. And this is the thing that I share with my clients and whoever else that has the fortunate or unfortunate opportunity to be in a conversation with me sometimes. Because it is really about recognizing who you are and that who you are actually changes. There's a myth, especially in Black culture or in hip hop culture at least, where it's like changing is a negative thing. And so you hear that a lot in hip hop music, at least through the 90s and 2000s or whatever. It's like I'm still the same. I ain't changed. You know what I'm saying? That this thing didn't make me different, and the reality of life is that we're always changing. And so, being able to be with yourself through those changes is really the whole game to me. And so, if you can not just spend the time, but the attention, because again, it's not just being by yourself, it's being with yourself. You can be by yourself for a long time and really not pay attention to who you are and the changes that you're going through as you develop further. Even as an adult, like even just releasing the book yesterday, for me was a transformational experience because it's like, I have to see myself differently now. And now I have to operate in a different way. And so that is the single most important thing. And a lot of the just the practical way is like two different things, two different distinctions, and how my brain is skipping around like this microphone's cutting in and out.
Ain't nobody but the devil. Go ahead.
It's all. So I help, Black executives and entrepreneurs, and I think again, this is just a human thing, but the difference between busyness and business, and we think that being busy really means that we're doing something productive. So activity does not equal productivity. And so one of the biggest things and the most challenging things that I hit my clients with a lot is like, sit with yourself and don't do anything. I use some choice words most of the time, just for the impact, for 5 minutes every day. Like you ain't thinking about anything in particular, you're not trying to accomplish anything, just learning how to be with yourself, because we are powerful, powerful, powerful beings, and we're always creating things. And so, if you can just take the time to just be with yourself for 5 minutes a day, see how challenging that is really, but then learn how you're recalibrating your nervous system to a different way of being. And that's what it is, it's a different way of being. We've highlighted doing a lot in culture as a means of progress, but it's just really getting to be who you are. And most of us don't take the time to do that. And so that's what I'm saying is the single most important thing, is just really taking the time to give yourself attention in a new way.
That's good. I'm just going to piggyback off basically both of them saying. I think you must pay attention to your thoughts. Most of the time, we don't sit down and actually pay attention to what we're actually thinking. And nobody talks to you more than you talk to yourself. So how are you talking to yourself? How are you allowing people to treat you? Like we walk around and see so many quote unquote arrogant people that's really insecure. And then we see so many humble people, but it's really just insecurity and dress up. I'm not that good. Why do you have to down yourself to say you're humble? You know what I mean? So it's all up here, man. As a person thinking, so are you? So if you're paying attention to your thoughts, even when it's angry, like why am I angry? And just sit with it until you get to the point. Why am I angry? No one can make me angry. Why do I choose anger in this moment? And that's what I just add on to amazing answers I just gave.
Well, I love that. I think one of the things that you said that brought up something else for me, you talking to yourself more than anybody else. Like, you're with yourself more than anybody else. You have to live with yourself more than anybody else. So the reality of you developing a relationship with the self that is nurturing is the most vital thing that we can do. And so watching your thoughts and not judging them, and then embracing that uncomfortability. Like, I was extremely uncomfortable in the week coming up to yesterday, just with the book release. And it's not like anything different was happening, it's just other people are knowing about it, but I was so full of angst. But it wasn't because I was anticipating anything that anybody else was doing. It's like I was developing a different relationship with myself as to who I see myself to be. And it was difficult. I don't know if my wife was here. She might be able to tell you, like, just the angst that I was in, but loving myself enough to just be with myself in that. And not avoid it, not try to put it away, not try to discard it, not try to dismiss it, but just being willing to be there. Think about, and this is why I love you that you did that analogy, the person that you have cared about the most in this world. and how you would treat them in a moment of distress. And the care and attention and affection that you would show. Like, what does it take to do that for yourself, really? And can you make the decision to do that on a regular basis? And that would be a transformational thing, I think, that we could all experience.
I love it, and I like to say, like, none of this can be done without practice, right? None of this can be done without consistency. And so, Craig, I want to ask you, I think, for me, working out is probably the most inconsistent thing I've done in my life. I mean, I've started many times, I've downloaded the apps. How do you see, or how do you empower your clients to become more consistent with their daily regimen for them to reach the goals that they reach? Because I've seen you work with a lot of different people and have some really great results. And so how do you tap into that consistency?
You know, one of the things I do is I tell them to do a daily goal. You said it, do a daily goal list. I have an iPhone, so on the iPhone I can put the bubbles right by it. So I got like 10 goals.
Hey man, Andrew can do that too.
I'm just saying. I don't know that word. See, my phone. But so I got 10 goals every day. I gotta hit them. And I work out today. And every time I do, I check it off. I made my wife feel loved today. Check it off. I ate 80% clean today. I check it off. And at the end of the 10 goals, I gotta get 80%. So after the week, if my week doesn't add up to 80%, I'm giving $100 away. I can't tell you to give up money if it doesn't mean that, if you got abundant of money or whatever, but sacrifice something that means something to you. You gotta sacrifice something, or you're just gonna be like, all right, I'm gonna go tomorrow. I'm like, okay.
Can you go deeper into that? Like, what's the value of the sacrifice, or what do you mean by sacrifice when you're explaining that to people?
So, how I got so close to God is because I liked working out. If I didn't read my Bible, I couldn't go to the gym. But I love going to the gym. So, like, I'm going to read my Bible because I want to go to the gym. So that's what I mean by sacrifice. Something that you love doing. Give that up if you don't do this. And it just, after time, it was just like, I don't need this list anymore. It becomes you. You said something earlier about your frustrations. My old business coach, she said, you're thinking like an employee, you're a boss. And it was that transition that I was frustrated. I was like, I don't know this world. And it's brand new, but you're just taking it one day at a time. It's literally like, okay. Before you know it, you're gonna look back and like, I'm living in this world. You know what I mean? So.
Yeah, and you can't tell people what is most important to them, but how do you help them get in touch with what's most important to them?
Questions, like as a personal trainer, we become your best friends. So I'm asking you all these questions, I'm listening to you, I'm seeing if you take accountability or if you find excuses or you reflecting, how do you see yourself? You know what I mean? So I take nothing personal, because most of the time people nobody likes to admit their weak areas. Everyone's come in and hit, I'm good here. Yeah, but let's do legs today. Man, I need it. Exactly.
That takes me back to what you said earlier. Talking about the mask that people put on and with, being conceited or being arrogant, and also being humble, so to speak. And, I like to think of humility as the acceptance of who you really are in any respect. And so when you just said that, it just reminded me of that. And just helping people really get in touch with that. Because what that made me think about is people who may not think they're motivated by anything. But obviously we all are motivated by something. It just takes some effort and, again, attention to really learn what that is. Yeah.
Man, so Christine. I named this healthy culture, and I think that at times people think that I'm like, how do we as a culture become healthy? But I wanted to really dial this down into the individual space, because I feel like we can't have a healthy culture if the individuals are not aware how to be healthy within themselves. So in your work, especially when working with families, how do you see once somebody child or a parent is becoming more aware of how they can get that mental stability or how they can start going in the right direction, how does that impact the household?
This is such a great question. So first, I want to address something you just said about how you can't have a healthy culture unless you have healthy individuals. And I don't know if I agree with that 100%. I think in some cases, there is a lot of truth to that, especially when we're looking at things from a very westernized perspective. So, for example, the counseling field, very white, very westernized perspective on the traditional counseling setup. With a therapist, an individual, you work on individual goals. It's very much about the self, and I know I just said loving yourself well and all that, and I really stand by that. However, when you think about different cultures, there are some people who are just more communal, more collectivist. So sometimes it is very possible to move as a collective towards healthy goals, and it just permeate the individuals. Like you can start from a collective point of view, and it spread and be adopted by individuals. But in this sense, and in the role that I have as a therapist, it is very much on an individual level. So I do work with individuals, I work with families, I work with relationships, whether that's couples and or more than couples. I believe that families are systems. And when I try to explain that to families and I talk to them about behavior change and belief system change, I try to describe families as a mobile, like a baby mobile that hangs over a crib. Usually it has, an arm, and it has all these different pieces, cross pieces, and strings that hang down, and you have all these little things that are dangling down. If you touch one of those things on a mobile, what happens?
They are.
It shifts the whole thing. And that is exactly how families function. You cannot take a family of 4, us right here, and then I'm the only one going to therapy, and then I start to change. What happens with me is going to affect all of them, whether you want it to or not, or whether you're willing participants in the change or not. It will. It absolutely will, because maybe I decide I don't like our dynamic anymore. So I'm not going to participate in the shenanigans with you, and that affects you. And then you're watching it, and you're like, oh, shoot, what's going on here? I mean, like, it really is a thing. And so we have to think about, yes, individual change is very transformative, and it's important. But people are not, walking around in this world really by themselves. They're not. We're all connected to somebody, or some people, or some system. And so whatever happens with an individual person is going to affect everybody around them. So I typically try to approach families explaining that dynamic, letting them know. Most families come and they might have an identified person that's the problem. Like, hey, can you fix my kid because they're acting up? It's making it hard for us. We're struggling. Their sibling is having a hard time. Okay, and typically I'm like, okay, tell me more about what's happening. And then I hear more, and I find out that there are all these other layers going on that are at play. It's not just this one child. There's stuff going on with the parents. There's, the auntie has stayed at their house for 3 weeks and moved in, and it's all, it's just lots of stuff that usually people aren't conscious of how it's affecting the system. So, So I try my best, with being a therapist, there's a lot of education that goes into it, because most of the time we're kind of just laser focused on our problem, and we're laser focused on what we want to change, and we're not seeing all the other things that are involved. We're not seeing all the other elements that are contributing, or even what we're doing that's contributing, So yes, I'm so glad you asked that, because it is important to start with an individual, but acknowledging that change can happen at a system level too, and trickle down, and not necessarily that it has to start at an individual level. And
appreciate you educating me. Because I mean, I can see that happening even just within my own household, or as I view people who are trying to go into that line, like it kind of spreads out. And you know, when I started on my journey with understanding who I am, Don was probably one of the first people that I spoke with, and he, the biggest thing that, you know, when Don said the unfortunate part of talking to Don is that you more like gonna cry 1 or 2 times when you get done talking to Don. But it's because what he does is that he identifies the story that you're telling yourself. And so, Don, I want you to kind of go into, you know, just that tactic of how do you help people discover the story that they're telling themselves, and what do you feel like is probably like the best way for somebody to kind of come to that understanding?
Yeah, I'll see if I can be brief with that. I think what it comes down to is that if I was being liberal with this idea is that everything is a story. Like, story is everything. We're always telling ourselves stuff about things. And the truth about it is that most of the time there's a whole host of things that we don't even know. So, because that's a fact that I don't know very much, I don't know what's going on outside this door, I don't know what's going on the other side of that wall, I don't know what's going on in anybody's thoughts or feelings, physically or otherwise. Anything that I have going on in myself about it is just a story. And so if I take that approach, then it's like, oh, is this story actually working for me? And so I can have that self-inquiry and be like, all right, is this story true? Is it working? Is it something that is actually like valuable to me to hold? And it can be anything. And so it goes again with that self, you know, I don't know what it was called exactly, but what I call it with my clients is self-intimacy. And it's where you're like taking real time to get to know yourself as you continue to develop. And then becoming aware of those stories that you're telling yourself, because if you take the idea that everything you're telling yourself is a story, because we're constantly interpreting, we're constantly creating, it's just what we do. It's how we got everything that we see in here. And that's really kind of what the human heart is, for lack of a better word, designed for. We get enraptured in stories. And so when it's our own personal story, it's like, oh, she thinking this about me right now because, you know, I did X, Y, Z and such and such and such. Like, that is a story. It has a beginning, a middle, and what's the ending of it? What are you telling yourself about this thing? And then once you become aware of what you're actually saying, just be like, well, is that true? Is it true? Because if it's not true, what are you gonna do now? And when you start to see it that way, it's like, oh, okay. Well, if it ain't true, then I might want to be doing things that are true. So let me see what else could be true. Now I'm looking at possibility instead of limitation. So it moves from having this narrow idea of what is to the broader possibilities of what could be. Because my perception, my perspective is so limited. I only can look in one direction at a time. I don't know what's going on right behind me, but it's happening right here. I do have a sense of some things, like, yeah, there's some warmth, there's some, I don't know. I looked at it when I came in a little bit, and the body is taking in all of this information, so we're just always interpreting it into something. And if you can accept that as a possible truth, that everything you're doing is a story that you made up, pretty much, that you can question yourself and be like, okay, is this a true story or is it a story that I want to even keep telling? And that's how you become aware of it.
You know, I'm going to add on that.
Go ahead. Hopefully you're not going to go up to my segue to
No. Like last night, the night before last, I'm up at 1:23 in the morning, and I'm just typing, like God is downloading. And I said, what are you doing? I said, God is talking. So I'm just typing. The whole thing is about stories. It's like the whole Bible is stories. Jesus always told stories. Like, to get somebody to see themselves, he would tell them a story and see if you can see yourself in this story. And I think one of the issues is when we have conflict with somebody, it's you and the problem versus me. And I was talking to this successful man. I was like, dude, how are you so successful? He said, because I go hard on the issue and easy on the person. He said, so I get with the person and I say, yo, it's me and you, we're on the same team. How do we figure this out? And man, I took that in every relationship in my life. And I just started thinking, like, if you think that person is the problem, you become part of the problem. You know what I mean? Like, it was a story about my buddy's son is on his basketball team. His son comes in and says, Dad, Mike's a ball hog. He was like, what do you mean? He said, he won't ever pass the ball. He said, so what did you do? He said, I stopped passing the ball. You became part of the problem. He said, so I want you to do this. I want you to pass it to him 6 times. He said, but he don't deserve it. He said, I know, just pass it to him 6 times. He said, I don't want to. He said, I know, just pass it to him 6 times. Came in the next game. He said, Dad, I did what you said. He said, what happened? He said, Mike started passing me the ball. Because Mike was seeing him as the problem. He was seeing Mike as the problem. And this is how we do in every relationship. Because I don't know how you see me, but I see you, and it's going to affect my behavior towards you.
Yeah, what's the best way for us to know how we see each other? To just have a conversation. And that's a really powerful element too. There's a piece to this that is like when he was saying what the boy was saying. This is a trick. This is a way that we can recognize when we're in the real deep stories. When we're like, you're making up a story, you're saying something is always or never, or it's never gonna be, or whatever. You can assume that's not true. And so that's a great way. So I'm really glad that you said that, because that is a big indicator, like, oh, I'm making up a story and it's probably not true. So what could be true?
Yeah, 100%.
So speaking of stories, oftentimes, when I'm reflecting on myself and my physique, I go to Instagram, and Instagram tells me all these stories that I just ain't doing it right. You know what I mean? I'm not where I should be, especially when all of a sudden Craig Donnell Jr. just kind of scrolls up on my stuff, and I'm like, bruh, like how? Like, I remember Craig when he was at Sumner, and he was not that size. But I think when we're in this health journey, sometimes, social media like tells us these stories, right? And so oftentimes you think that you're probably not healthy if you don't look this way. And I think earlier you talked in the sense of, at times in genetics, like your body's just probably not, that's not what, so I said in the question, like, does me having a 6-pack mean that I'm healthy? Or can I be healthy with this dad bod that I got? You know what I mean? And what does that look like? Or what is the misconception with what people see and then what is actually healthy?
So that's a great question. Healthy doesn't have a look. It's what you determine is healthy. When I was doing fitness shows and I looked my best, I felt my worst. Because I was depriving myself of all the things my body needed, the micronutrients, to look that good. I walk around at 240 now, when I'm doing shows at 215. This is the best I've ever felt because I'm actually taking care of my body. I'm not depriving myself of nothing. But I also know that there's certain type of foods that make you look a certain type of way. So I'll eat 80% of that and just 20% of this. People think when you're you can't have this. Yes, I do. And they always catch me on my cheat day. Craig, you eat that? I can't really taking pictures. Caught me on 20. Like, what's going on? But it's not that hard. It's really not. 80-20 is like, if you eat 3 meals a day, you got 4 meals that week that you can have, right? So if I miss Tuesday, I'll just take a meal. Wednesday, I know me and her, we go on date night, so Friday's a meal and Saturday's a meal, and that's what works for me. So it's really not that hard if you, we were talking about earlier, if you change the patterns and behaviors to the things that are actually killing us. Like, we desire things that are just not good for us to eat. So if you could just change that, like tweak the little things that are actually doing your body a disservice, then yeah, everybody can help.
I mean, what that means is that I gotta give up all these traditional meals during the holidays, because
See, that's my 20. Knowing Thanksgiving's coming, I'm clean.
Man, I see Instagram, somebody made a sweet potato, macaroni and cheese pie. I was like, good lord. Soul pies. No, I appreciate it. As we're coming to a close, I think the one thing that I would like to know from each of you all is, all of you all are in this position of service, right? You're constantly giving to people, and like, how do you find balance to take care of yourself? I mean, I know it's probably a little bit of I gotta practice what I preach, but like in those moments of barriers of struggle, like what is it that you tap into to get you up out of bed to do the work that you do, but then also take care of yourself?
So it is totally practice what I preach. For me, I might not spend 5 minutes, being with myself every day, but now I have a regular practice throughout the day where I'm talking to myself. Not just my self-talk, my automatic talk, but like I'm intentionally inquiring, some self-inquiry, and I do that all throughout the day. And I ask myself, like, what are you needing when I wake up, what do I wake up needing? Like, Chris, what do you need now? You've woken up, and what do you need for the day? And I figure out what does that mean? Like, do I need something physically? Do I need something emotionally? Do I need something mentally, spiritually? What is it? And then, I'm getting dressed and getting ready for work. I might start feeling a little stressed. Ooh, Chris, what do you need right now in this moment? I feel it. I'm feeling it in my body. I'm big on body scans because our body is going to tell us things. When we're just super busy and we're too busy to pay attention to what we need, your body is going to tell you if you are trying to be tapped into it and pay attention. So throughout the day, I'm asking myself, what do I need? Because what I need changes. And so taking care of myself changes. I really do believe in the practice of loving yourself well. And so that looks different all the time. It might be that I'm super emotional about something, and perhaps it's related to grief. Maybe I'm missing my dad. Maybe it's something like that. And so I'm asking myself, what do I need in this moment? Do I need some comfort? Where can I get that from? How can I meet this need that I have? And that's me taking care of myself so that I don't feel burned out, so that I don't get to work and I have a session and I don't have anything for my client because I haven't checked in with myself and met my needs throughout the day. So the way that I can say that I keep myself from feeling burned out, not to say that I never do, or that I don't get tired, or I don't, run myself into the ground sometimes, but the way that I keep from doing that as much as I could is by checking in with myself. I talk to myself. I kind of take my own temperature, scan my own body. If I'm feeling frustrated, where am I feeling that in my body? Is it in my head? Is it in my shoulders? Is it in my stomach? Like, what does that mean? What is my body telling me? So I think the practice of deepening into yourself, getting to know yourself, figuring out what you need so that you can give yourself that, is how you combat burnout and how you can actually do the best self-care, which I think sometimes that word is overused a little bit, but it's the way that you can love yourself the best.
Right on.
Yeah, when I think of balance, I don't really think of it as a static thing. That balance is a verb, even. That even right now, if I'm understanding how our brains work at all, like we have an equilibrium. If I stand up, it's not that I just stand up and I'm standing. You see when a baby is learning how to walk, that it's a constant balance. So balance is not just about, setting things in place, but when things are balanced, they're standing still. And so I think of life as a series of imbalances where all my attention is on this one thing for a time, and then on this thing for a time. So like if you think of how you move, you walking, like all of your weight is on one foot at a time as you're moving somewhere. And so I don't think of it as like, I gotta make sure all these things are even as balance. It's just that flow that you're talking about, where it's like checking in with yourself on a regular basis, like what do I need? So some of those mornings I might not get out of bed because I'm just like, I need to just lay here. I need to just be here. And just giving yourself permission to do that. And so I think the biggest indicator or the biggest way you can become aware of it is recognizing if your activity or your actions is being driven by an external idea or force, or if you're recognizing that it's coming from the internal. And so it's like, I gotta do all this stuff, I gotta be here, I gotta do that, is it what you decided to do because you wanna do it from the inside out, or is it what you are doing because you think that it's an imposed thing from the outside. And so if you can become aware of those things and just give yourself permission to do whatever it is that you feel like you need in that moment, checking in and saying, hey, what do you need? And just having the courage to make that choice. And it does take courage because we are powerful beings. We're powerful beings that inertia, we move in a direction, we keep moving in that direction until we actually slow down enough to change directions. And so we might just be doing something because we do it, but to take that chill and be like, all right, which direction do I want to go? And to have the practice of doing that so many moments throughout the day just gives you are filling yourself up and you're nurturing yourself more regularly.
Great.
I gotta follow that. Yeah, man, I'm gonna piggyback off of both of y'all. This is only because I be going third. Like,
Just sit on here.
That's why I don't have 4 people in there. The 4 person be like, all right.
Nah, man. Same. I used to. I got a schedule every morning. I got a schedule. My first hour I wake up and I spend an hour with God. I'm praying, I'm listening. I do more listening than anything. And literally, God downloads what I need. And being that I'm a business owner, I realized I could do a lot of things, but it didn't mean I had to do all the things just because I could. So speaking of what you was talking about, I was like, what am I supposed to do? What do I need? So the other day, my son was, he's 2. This is not the other day, it was a year ago. He's playing with this toy, and I'm at the laptop, and I'm trying to figure out all these things, and I'm in just angst, and I'm trying to figure out all these things. And he's playing with this toy, and he trips, and he starts crying. He runs to his father, and he hands me this toy. I pick him up, I kiss him, I put him down, he goes to play. And I'm sitting at the laptop, and I got this toy in my hand, and I look at my son, he's happy. And I see the problem, he gave it to his father, and I look at my son, and he's happy. I said, okay. I just closed my laptop and went to go play with my son, because what we need changes. Like, I'm like, this is gonna figure it. God, this is actually your job. I'm gonna go over and play with my son. And it just works itself out, man, one day at a time. So one thing that I need is to sit with myself, not get so focused on the external things. I need to do this, I need to do that, I need to do that. Sometimes I live in the future, and I need to stay right here and take it one day at a time. Bible says, the last thing to say, the word is a lamp to my feet and a light to my path. When he wrote this, they didn't have lights, they didn't have street lights, they had a candlestick. The word was so dark. So he said, your word is a lamp to my feet and a light to my path. It shows you one step at a time. Then you look back and you see the whole path is there. It's only one at a time. So I try to stay in the present. And it's a hard thing for me, but yeah.
Because it's a gift, though. Man, I really appreciate y'all coming in to talk with me. I really feel like that people will be fed from this conversation. And I look forward to next year. And thank you all for joining us for Rebuild Honestly. And we'll see you next year.
Thank you.